Hi there everyone, and welcome to Paper Wishes Weekly Webisodes. I'm Sarah Newman, and I'm happy to bring you the 38th episode of Mixed Media, The Paper Wishes Way. Today I want to show you a couple of easy techniques with a classic mixed media tool, cutting dies. So we have three really versatile designs which can be used as backgrounds, layering elements, or even snipped apart to use as accents on your cards. So I have 3 card projects to share with you today, plus a couple of demos too. And throughout today's webisode, we'll be using the Sage Mini Collection from 49 and Market. And we'll also be using some of their coordinating rub-ons, as well as the very fun epoxy coated stickers, the Wishing Bubbles and Baubles. So as you can see, we have a lot to explore today, and I am so glad that you're here. Come play with us. Okay, let's take a closer look at our 3 dies. So we have 2 from Hot Off the Press, and the first one I want us to look at is the All Over Chicken Wire. Now this has 2 dies in the set. You've got the intricate chicken wire, plus a rectangle shape to use as the backing if you want to. So when you die cut these 2 pieces, here's your rectangle, and then here's your intricate chicken wire, and that will fit just right on top. Now this measures 4.5 by 5 1/4, so it's great for a standard size of 5 by 6.5 inch card. And then if you die cut those and you just pop it down on the front of your card, you've got a really nice instant background. Now another set that we're going to look at today is one that is also very useful. So this is the Nested Arches dies. So as you can see, you've got 6 cutting dies in the set. You can use these independently of one another, or you can do some mixing and matching and layering as well. You can also use these to create shaped cards if you want. So if I go back to my standard card, and this is the folded side here, fold this up, make sure to crease that down, and then just take one of the arches, place it down onto the front of your card, offset this edge that's on the folded edge of your card, offset that a little bit, don't line it up perfectly, but a little bit off to the edge there, secure it down, and then run it through your die cutting machine, and you will have a shaped card that looks like this. So you've got some really fun options to use with these dies as well. Now, of course, because it's hot off the press, very often all you need to do is just flip the package over and take a look. And in this case, you have a really pretty card designed by Lene to get your inspiration going. All right, then our third set is called A Stitch in Time, and this has 2 die designs, both with kind of a sewing or stitching theme. So one is a lace design, and the other is what I'm kind of calling a woven look. And both of these will create some really nice borders. Okay, so a couple of hints and tips for die cutting, and I'm thinking especially with intricate dies, like I would consider these to be fairly intricate, but also our chicken wire is very delicate, very intricate. So a couple of tips. First, I avoid thin paper, and I'm thinking like copy or white paper. You definitely want to be using some cardstock that's got a bit of stability to it. Not something super duper thick, but like the 49 and Market or any of the Hot Off the Press papers are going to be perfect. In fact, I'm also using this metallic gold cardstock from Hot Off the Press, which is a dream to die cut with. So like Goldilocks, you want to find the weight of cardstock that is sturdy enough, but not, too super thick. And so any of the Hot Off the Press papers, any of the 49 and Market papers are going to be absolutely ideal, and they will die cut beautifully. All right, so second tip, I always suggest people have a low tack tape on hand. And this one from Hunky Dory is always on my craft table. I never put it away. I am glad that it's purple though, because then I can spot it in among all of the other stuff that I have on my work surface. And you can just tear off a little bit of this and then do your die cutting. So this just makes things a little bit easier. I'll move this aside and bring back in my arch here. So if I was die cutting this to the side here, what I would do, position that in place, just grab a little bit of this tape, tears really easily, and you don't need a whole lot. A little bit will do it for you. And because this is a low tack tape, when you run it through your die cutting machine, unlike if you try and use like washi tape or some other tapes, it can get really, really stuck in your cardstock. So this is, again, quite an easy release tape. So once I've got it secured down in place, run it through my die cutting machine, and I know that this won't be sort of shifting around, especially since I usually roll forward and then roll back. So this is a great little item to have on hand. It just makes everything a bit easier. Now back to our intricate dies. So for example, our chicken wire, come back to that. One thing I suggest you look into is the die cut release sheets, and these are from Specks too. And these are kind of like, you know, it feels almost like a wax paper, but what you'll do is just use scissors to cut a piece of this and then sandwich it in with your die and your cardstock. Run it through your die cutting machine, and this makes, it just makes it release a little bit more cleanly, more evenly, and really helps with some of those intricate dies. So another thing to keep in mind. And finally, one more thing, and this really does go for your intricate dies, are the sticky Specks. Now these come on quite large sheets, so an A4 size, which is a little bit bigger than 8.5 by 11. And so I usually trim down my pieces just to have, again, to have on hand. All you need to do is like lift up this top layer, take your intricate die, have your cardstock that you're putting it down onto, and then just place it down on here, smooth this down, lift off that top layer, and then you will have, you can't see them because they're really tiny, little sticky dots on here. And what I'll do, rather than putting the whole piece down, because then I kind of can't grab a corner of it, I'll just go edge by edge, corner by corner, especially getting the very, very corners of my pieces, like so. You just need to lift that up, and then you can pop this down onto whatever your surface is. And it will stay down, and you don't have to worry about any glue seeping through, anything showing, or any messy wet glue. So definitely for the sticky Specks for the win on adding your intricate dies onto your surfaces. Okay, so now that we've seen the basics, let's take a look at some cards. Our first card is using a combination of dies, and so you can see, of course, the arches here. I've got two layered together. And then behind the arches, I have some snippets of one of the fabric dies just cut apart. And so that is from our Stitch in Time collection, and it's this design here. Now this is a fairly large die, so of course you can use it as a border, you could use it as a focal element, but you can also die cut it and then snip it apart, which is a lot of fun. So I've got this little bit that I've die cut. I've got this, of course, from that gold metallic cardstock. And all you need to do is just snip it apart, kind of working a bit randomly. Now another little trick for this, I do recommend a good pair of small, sharp scissors. So when I was starting with this, I was using my old standbys, which are, you can see, quite a bit larger. And they're just a little bit more unwieldy, I would say. With the little ones, you have a lot more control. It's easier to get around in some of these areas, and you can just be a bit more nimble, I find, especially creating some more abstract shapes. It just makes it a lot simpler to do. So some small scissors can make life a bit easier when you're doing this. Now my focal element here, you can see that beautiful blossom. This is a rub-on. Now you may know that I love rub-ons, especially the ones from 49 and Market. I think this may be a childhood thing, but I just find that they add such a beautiful and easy layer to my projects. So if you remember rub-ons from your childhood, let me assure you that these are a lot more sophisticated, in both design and quality than the ones that you maybe remember from when you were a kid. So let me show you how to use these. It is as simple as it used to be, probably a lot easier. So I've got one of the little butterflies here, and I've just trimmed this out of the backing sheet. So you just cut out both layers because you've got 2 layers on here. Separate and remove the liner, so this white piece, you can discard that. Place your rub-on where you want it to go. Kind of smooth that down. There's a little bit of tackiness on the back of this clear portion, which helps it to stay in place. And then in your package, you have one of these little white tools that you can use to burnish this down. And so all you need to do is just make sure that you're making contact with all of the areas, especially some of these little details. You want to make sure that that's all transferred. And then what you can do is just lift up and kind of take a peek. I'm going to pull this back carefully. If I find that there are areas that are not transferring, I can just put this down and go back and use that tool again. But you can see, easy peasy. And now I have a really sweet little butterfly accent. So that is about as easy as it can possibly be to create a really nice, elegant focal on here. Now I've overlapped this with a dazzle that says hugs, so you can of course layer things on top of your rub-ons, and I'll show you another technique for layering on some opal polish in a minute. Now I've also got some rub-ons here on the front as well. Now when I open up the card, I've got more of this beautiful pattern paper. I've got some more rub-ons, part of my message on here. And then I've also got some more of the nested arches. So you can see how they create a really nice focal, even for the inside of your card. Now here's where I'm using one of the epoxy stickers. This is also working as part of my focal. And then I've got another little wishing bubble here. I've got some hearts here and a few here on the front of my card. Now you probably notice a bit of metallic green around the edges of the card and around the arches. Now this is Opal Polish, and one of my favorite mediums to use, and I'm using it a lot for today's projects. This is a fabulous medium for adding just a touch of soft iridescent shine. So we've done a lot of demos with Opal Polish, but I'll just show you again. All you need to do is just dip that sponge into the medium, remove any excess, and then you can add some just along the edges as heavily or as lightly as you want to. And then you will have a really beautiful iridescent, soft but defined edge. And the Opal Polish color that I'm using, and let me check on here, this is the Yellow Limes, a great green that works beautifully with this color collection. Then you just need to let this dry and you have a really nice finishing effect. Our second card features the Stitch in Time die using the lace pattern. And this is a fun one to layer with lots of different backing papers. So I've cut it from lightly patterned cardstock from the Sage collection and then glued it on top of the metallic gold cardstock. I really like this metallic gold because it gives a nice sort of classic gold, but it's not really highly reflective or like a mirror cardstock. Then I've got layers of pattern paper on the background and of course accents too from the Sage collection. Now in that collection from 49 and Market, you do have 4 double-sided papers, and you can see that I've used them on my background. You also get 2 sheets of laser cut elements, and I've got the laser cut elements here, lots of them popped up on foam tape for a little bit of extra dimension. So then we've also got a really tiny Dream Big rub-on down here on one of the tag laser cuts, and a few more wishing bubbles here as our accent. And then I've also done some spattering on the card inside. I've done some spattering with our Opal Polish, and this is a really fun way to add a little bit of texture and shine. I've done my spattering right on top of these rub-on elements. So this is a rub-on here, and so is the butterfly. So if you're wondering if you can do layering with this medium on top of a rub-on, the answer is yes. It gives you a really beautiful look. So let me show you. This is a really easy one to do. I've got a piece of that gorgeous cardstock that I've added some rub-ons to, so one right here, quite a large one. This is printed onto the paper and so is this here. So I'm just going to get a little bit of my Opal Polish. I'll use a palette knife to get just a little bit out. You don't need a lot for this technique. Pop it down onto my craft mat. Be sure and put the lid back onto your Opal Polish, though of course you want to make sure that that doesn't get dried out. And I'm using my Distress Splatter Brush, so it shouldn't surprise you. One of my favorites. I've got it wet and I'm just mixing in a bit of that water here. And then what I'm going to do is just take this and splatter. Now the more water I use, the more diluted the effect will be and the larger the splatters will be. So you can kind of play with how much or how little of that you want to have. And then all you need to do is just let that air dry. So quick and easy. And it doesn't take very long to dry either. So a great way to add some sparkle and some shine to your card. Okay, now one last card that I want to show you, I'm going to clean my hands quickly first, is another one using the chicken wire die. And this is such a fun die to use. And in this case, I've die cut this from the gold metallic cardstock, but I've also die cut it from patterned cardstock underneath. So I've got kind of a dual layer going on here. Maybe you can see that there. I'll show it to you using my black, white, and green. It's a little bit easier to see. So you remember this. I've got my white chicken wire on my bright green cardstock, and then cut another layer of this. Pop the two together, slightly offset. Okay, just slightly to the side. Again, use those sticky specks, and this is going to give you a really cool kind of shadow effect. And then going back to our card design, I've got one of the arches back here in the background. I've got some of the bubbles up here up at the top. On the inside, again, more pattern paper, another arch die cut, and some rub-ons that are even going across onto the inside front of the card. This, of course, is the pattern paper, and I've done a little bit of edging with that Opal Polish as well. So I think you can see just how versatile these dies are, and of course all the other supplies that we've been working with today. And hopefully this has inspired you as well. Simple, easy, and effective. A big thank you for joining me today. We're really glad that you're here, and we're happy that you're part of the Paper Wishes family. Do feel free to leave a comment. We love to hear what you think. Each item can be purchased separately, and you can see them below. However, we've also bundled them into a creative money saver just for you. For the money saver, just see this webisode on paperwishes.com.